licensed clinical psychologist, a colleague of mine formerly in our private practice. He was a student of mine at the University of Laverne in his master's program, and a postdoctoral fellow of mine when I was the director of the Counseling Center at Laverne. John also is board certified as a clinical neuropsychologist, and just happened in his spare time to learn all about mindfulness, and went through the training program down in San Diego, I think at UC San Diego. And then also in his spare time, he was willing to go ahead. He's a full-time professor at Mount San Antonio College. And he also has learned all about mindfulness, and he's willing to share with us today about this very important topic in this time when we need to be more mindful and less stressed. So John, thank you very much for leading us in this session this morning.
My pleasure. Thank you, Rick. Of all the introductions I've ever got, that one was the most recent.
I forgot to say he's very funny.
Well, welcome everybody. Good morning, and it's nice to see you all here. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it. Let's start by taking just a moment to see if we can make a commitment with ourselves just to be very present here for the next 45 minutes or so, and put aside all of our thoughts about the future, the rest of the day, all of our worries about the past, and see if we can just be here now. I promise all of our worries and problems will still be there when we come back. No, they're not going anywhere. But let's just be here for a moment and see if we can do that. I'd like to give a brief introduction to mindfulness for those people who have never explored it before. But I'll make it very brief because I'd like to get to the exercise, and then if there's any questions at the end. So that's my plan. We humans spend lots of our time lost in thought. You know this to be true. We're constantly thinking about the future. We're constantly thinking about the past. And there's a reason that we do this. Our brains have been shaped by our environment in such a way that it was in our best interest to be thinking about the future and the past. If you imagine two little creatures, let's just use mice, and you have one mouse that is very brave and wants to take on the world and fight for justice and so forth. And then you have another mouse that is very anxious and worried and fearful. Which mouse would you put your money on is going to be the better survivor? Probably the one that is fearful and anxious. This is the one that will be avoiding any kind of situation that might be dangerous at all. So if you think of our emotional life, it's kind of the same way. I've done this exercise in class many times where I have all my students name all the emotions they can think of. And there are several theories of emotions. Some say there are 6 basic emotions, some say 27, some say hundreds. But no matter how you slice it, we tend to have more negative emotions, fear and disgust and anger and so forth, than we do positive emotions. And this is not really hard to figure out because negative emotions tend to help us survive in our evolutionary path better than positive emotions. There are some benefits to positive emotions, but when it comes to saving your skin, negative emotions help a little bit more. But now fast forward to our 2020 time, and pandemic notwithstanding, there's really not much call for an extreme sympathetic nervous system response, a very strong negative emotion. If you're walking along a path in the forest and a bear jumps out, it's in your best interest to have a strong stress response, a sympathetic nervous system response. But there aren't bears hunting us on a daily basis, maybe weekly or monthly, depending on where you live. But for the most part, no animal is hunting us for food. And our environment right now is fairly safe, compared to more than 150 years ago anyway. But we still have the same sympathetic nervous system response. We only have the one. And so reacting as if there is a bear in front of you when we have our latte that has been mixed incorrectly, that's damaging to our body. When we are not in physical danger, having that sympathetic nervous system response is not beneficial. In fact, the stress response either causes or makes worse every single disease process that we encounter. That's so important, I'm going to say it again. The stress response either causes or makes worse every single disease that we face. So here we are in 2020, and we have this overreactive sympathetic nervous system. So what do we do about it? Well, as a psychotherapist, I've spent years and years talking to people about their problems using different psychological theories. And I think it works, and I have a lot of respect for that. But then again, I wonder if thinking and talking, but mainly thinking about problems of thinking, helps. Is the solution to thinking problems more thinking? And that's what kind of led me into being interested in mindfulness as a different type of intervention. So what mindfulness is, in a nutshell, is paying attention to the present moment on purpose, non-judgmentally. Paying attention to the present moment on purpose, non-judgmentally. So how do we learn to do that? If we can seek refuge in the moment, well, then there is no future and nothing to worry about. If we are here in the moment, there is no past and nothing to worry about, nothing to be depressed over. If we can stay in the moment, we are coping. And how best to learn to cope with problems that arise than by practicing coping. And so one angle of mindfulness is we are practicing coping. And we're doing it in the most simple way possible. We are simply sitting there, paying attention to the present moment on purpose, non-judgmentally. And that turns out to have lots of psychological benefits. Now, the formal practice of mindfulness is meditation. And meditation is simply the sitting. So what are we doing when we're practicing mindfulness? Well, rather than talk about it, let's try it. So I invite you, if you are so inclined, to find a comfortable spot. John Kabat-Zinn would say, adopt a dignified posture. And every mindfulness teacher I've ever had said, let's try to have our spine straight, your chin slightly down. But John Kabat-Zinn, who is one of the founders of Mindfulness Based Stress Reduction, he developed his system in a hospital. So almost all of the patients were lying down. And so can you do mindfulness lying down? Sure. You can do it sitting in a chair. You can do it sitting on a cushion on the ground. There are benefits to sitting on the cushion. For one, lying down, sleep is always an issue. And a lot of times people will fall asleep. I've been in more than one mindfulness class where the instructor is guiding you and you hear gentle snoring off to the side. But maybe they need the rest. Non-judgmentally. So you do you. But however you like to do it, I find it best to have my lower back propped up a little bit so I don't hunch and take what's called the Pooh Bear state pose. But you can sit however you feel comfortable. A key would be to have your spine straight, your hands either facing up, that tends to be more openness, or facing down, that tends to be more grounded. So whatever you feel comfortable in. And let's go ahead and gently start to move into the practice just for a few minutes. And you may find that it's helpful to close your eyes, and let's screen out that visual input that's coming in. And gently bring your attention to your breath, to where you feel your breath most vividly. It might be at the nostrils, it might be in your chest or your stomach, but let's just focus on our breath. Bring your attention gently to your breath. And don't try to change it, and just observe the breath as it comes in your nose and out again. And we're just watching it like in a movie. We're not trying to change it. We're just paying attention on purpose to the present moment, which is the breath, non-judgmentally. We're not worried about it. As long as you're breathing at all, there's more right with you than wrong with you. So we're just breathing in and breathing out. And at this beginning part, if you feel a little bit tense somewhere, see if you can relax it. It's not imperative. If you feel a tightness somewhere, you might just observe that. What does it feel like? What does it feel like to be you in this moment in time? As we start paying attention to our breath. Breathing in and breathing out. And because this is what the mind does, you will find yourself lost in thought. You might be making your grocery list. You might be thinking of what you're going to do after this presentation. And when you discover that you are not following your anchoring breath, just gently and kindly bring yourself back to the breath. You may find yourself down a huge path of thought, and the real skill and practice of mindfulness is recognizing that you're not present and gently, non-judgmentally bringing yourself back to the present moment. And we're using our breath to anchor the present moment because the breath is always right here, right now. Even the greatest mindfulness practitioner in the world almost immediately finds their mind occupying them. And your mind is a very clever thing. It does not like to be ignored. So it will create stories that are fascinating. It will create plans. You will have your most creative thoughts right here. Anything to keep yourself from being present. That's what the mind does.
Yeah, it's like, why didn't you not mute when you started?
I tried. I was trying to figure it out.
When I'm running a mindfulness class, one thing I try to remind us all is that if you hear the door open, if you hear some talking, that's okay. It's just all part of the process. We simply observe it because it's happening right here, right now. Perfectly possible that my son comes barging in right now, asking for something. And if he does, that's okay. That's simply what's happening. Non-judgmentally, it's all part of the practice. So we're breathing in and breathing out. And you might bring your attention to the points of contact that you have. Your body sitting on the chair or the cushion, your hands resting on your thighs, maybe even the shirt on your neck, or your eyelids touching your cheek, all these different points of sensation. Those things are going on in the moment, and we can pay attention to them non-judgmentally. If you're uncomfortable in the way you're sitting, just see if you can last a couple more breaths. Certainly if you're feeling pain, you can adjust. We'll do it mindfully. We'll pay attention to what we're doing, but you can do that. But if your nose itches or something, see if you can just experience that itch. Non-judgmentally. We don't have to label it as painful or irritating. We can just leave it exactly as it is. And if you decide to scratch your nose, no problem. You can't do mindfulness wrong. breathing in and out, focusing on our breath that is happening right here, right now. And again, when you notice that your mind has taken you down some story-like path, that's okay. That's what the mind does. Just gently, kindly, non-judgmentally, bring your focus back to your breath. You notice you're thinking of something else? You notice you're thinking about the past or the future, accomplishing something or worrying about something? If so, just noticing that you're not here now is a victory. Just noticing that you're not present is the practice. When you notice that, you've won. It's really something to celebrate. Once you've noticed, kindly, non-judgmentally bring yourself back to the breath. And one final time, maybe check in with yourself. Where is your mind at right now? Are you on your breath? If not, gently bring yourself back. As we come to the conclusion of our brief formal practice and bring ourselves back into the room, you might wiggle your fingers and toes a little bit. And when you feel comfortable opening your eyes, there's no hurry, your own time. Opening your eyes and feel for a moment what your body sensations are. Do you feel slightly more relaxed? Do you feel agitated? Do you feel anxious? Do you feel calm and focused? However you feel is okay. Paying attention to our feelings is the key. Knowing where we're at and what it is like to be you in this moment. You might take a deep breath and bring yourself back into the room and feel proud of yourself that you have done your mindfulness for the day. So well done. So as we come back, I'm happy to answer any questions that I am able to answer, and would be interested in what the experience was like for you for this brief meditation. I know some of you may have a formal practice going on all the time, and some of you, this might be the first time. So I'd love to hear from you if you're so inclined to share. Otherwise, that's our formal exercise.
If anyone has any questions for John, please go ahead and ask. John, I'm curious, are there any studies that show the effect this has on the body if you are doing this daily, weekly.
Absolutely, yeah. There is a great book, which I am blanking on the name, the trait theory, traits, state of trait, anyway, it has the word trait in it. And the two scientists go through all of the data up until this point, because that's been something that's missing in the past, is hard data showing the benefits of mindfulness. And as a teacher, I'm constantly thinking, how is the best way to get across information? And when it comes to mindfulness, my experience is, if you can get someone to the first level of benefit, because why do it if it doesn't benefit us somehow? But if you can get someone to the first level of benefit, it opens up the whole world. You go, oh my gosh, I see what this can do for me, and I want more of it. One of my mindfulness teachers says it's almost like a superpower. And once you realize how that works, you want more and more of it. And the research is very clear about some of the biggest things that kill us, heart disease and hypertension and diabetes and all sorts of different things that are assisted by this type of practice. And it doesn't have to be a huge daily commitment. 5 to 10 minutes a day, and you will get to those benefits. You will start noticing, I'm feeling a lot calmer here. This person, where I usually would have been very upset, I'm letting it roll off my back. This thing that used to cause me anxiety is causing me a little less anxiety. And you'll start to feel those benefits. A great practice is 15 minutes a day, that you could do that for forever and get all the benefits that you need. But the main thing is, it's a consistent practice. 5 to 10 minutes a day would be perfect to start.
Go ahead, Donna.
Hey, good morning, John. I'm so glad you're here, because you reminded me that I studied with John Kabat-Zinn, and I have forgotten that because my brain is shrinking. And it was so wonderful to be studying with him in the years gone by. I want to give a vote for walking meditation.
Yeah.
For those of us who have lots of energy, I've been, 35 years later, meditating when I walk. Mm-hmm. And I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you. There is a course developed by John Kabat-Zinn, as you know, called MBSR, Mindfulness Based Stress Reduction. And it's an 8-week course. It's really a boot camp kind of for mindfulness, though that puts a more harsh spin on it than it probably deserves. And the class goes through different kinds of meditation, and one of them is walking meditation.
Yeah, so good, so good.
Others are sitting meditation. So, the mindfulness-based stress reduction class, I would highly recommend it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
John, if anybody wants to study more about mindfulness in this area, any tips as to where we can be involved in any kind of classes like this?
Well, the studio that I was going to before it closed down was called Waking Up, and it's in downtown Claremont. It's Randy and Tracy Sokoloff, and I really like him as a teacher. I have been trained to do MBSR classes, and whenever we get back up and running, I'd like to be doing those. There's not much in the area. When I took an MBSR class, I drove down to Encinitas once a week. That's about a 2-hour one-way trip. But the instructor there, I really like, Julie Chippendale. She was one of the instructors when I did a silent retreat, and I really connected with her. So it was worth the drive. But there's not a whole lot up here in terms of formal mindfulness MBSR training, at least the way it's done with John Kabat-Zinn. But my website, drjohnpelletieri.com, I have kind of a sign-up list, and people will sign up, and once I get enough for a full class, I'll run a class.
Oh, okay.
But you could search online. There is one online training program, Palouse, P-A-L-O-U-S-E. He is an MBSR teacher, and he runs an online class, which is great. I personally like the in-person part. And I found a lot of benefit from doing it in person. But if that's what you got, that's what you got, and it'll be just fine. It's a self-directed course. Otherwise, exactly what we just did today, if you did that 5 minutes a day, you're a mindfulness practitioner. Once you feel like you can do 10 minutes, bonus, you're doing great. So it's not something you have to earn or so forth. You can do it because honestly, if you're just paying attention to your breath, you're doing it right. So I like a little bit of instruction here and there. And the MBSR class was great, and it really sets you on the road. But you be you.
John, I want to thank you for being here also. I want to make a testimony to it being a wonderful self-therapy for dealing with grief because of this fact that you tend to go back, what could I have done and what was my future look like? I think having you today is a clear reminder that you can't just learn it once. You can get into the habit and then you can fall out of the habit. And it's like any good practice, you have to remember to go back. And so thank you for being here. And these refresher opportunities to take a class or to think, oh, I know that, I've read that. My problem is I read a lot about things like this, but that's not very productive. Doing it is what one has to do.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. You can't replace the rear end on cushion time. That's where the I want to say rubber meets the road, but that's where the bottom meets the cushion. And I like having lots of different teachers. I worked with someone who was in Tibet for many years, and just getting different perspectives from different teachers is so important to me too. I learned so much like that. So thank you. Yeah.
John, thank you also for being with us. This is a really important topic for right now.
Yeah.
Are there any, speaking of supports, are there any apps that you would recommend that might be helpful as people start or as good reminders every day to prompt us?
That is a great question. Thank you for asking that. I like the Insight Timer app. Okay. Insight Timer, it's free. You can pay for some extra features, but I've never done that. It's free. And it has a timer on there, and you can set it for how long you want to meditate, and you can have different bells in there to help kind of shock you out of your story, you know. There's lots of little features, and it also keeps track of your daily practice. A friend of mine who was very anxious, he deals with anxiety, has always dealt with anxiety. I introduced him to mindfulness, kind of gave him a book to read that was a very beginner book, and introduced him to the practice. And being who he is, he has taken the Insight Timer, and he has like 365 days in a row. So, you know, great. 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day. On the weekends, he does 15 minutes. And, you know, when we talk, he tells me how much benefit he's receiving from it. You know, all his anxiety is not gone, but it's a lot better. And he's focusing his anxiety in a positive way, which is to make sure he meditates every day. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I like that one. There's one called My Calm Beat that you can use for breathing in a certain rhythm. I used to subscribe to Sam Harris's Waking Up, and he's got lots of great lessons. A little bit expensive for my taste, you know, especially when I'm used to everything being free on the internet. But those are ones that I use. The best one is the Insight Timer. I use that every time I meditate. Not every time, but most times. Does anyone else know of a good app?
I think a lot of people use Calm,
Mm-hmm.
C-A-L-M, and a friend made me aware that Kaiser is actually, if you're a patient of Kaiser, that you can get a free subscription.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kaiser wants to make sure you never use them.
Exactly.
I used to work at Kaiser, so. Any other questions or thoughts or comments or criticisms?
I have a question about, sorry, I don't put the video on. I have a question about what non-judgmental specifically means. So if I'm being positive with myself, if I'm observing good things, should I still try to remove that from my mind, or is it just the negative?
So I've seen meditation teachers answer questions in 3 ways. They will answer the question kind of directly. They will also say, I can't tell you that, you have to find out yourself. And then they'll also just sit there and look at you for a while until someone else asks a question. In this case, I as a teacher, I'm inclined to tell you my opinion. But 2 brief thoughts. One is, being non-judgmental simply means accepting the things that have happened. You're simply accepting the things that are happened. If my son comes in here and says something silly, that's happened. There's no going back. There's no undoing it. I'm going to not judge him and put a label on it that causes me to have these feelings, sympathetic nervous system response. I'm going to not label it. I'm going to simply observe it and non-judgmentally accept what it is. Negative feelings are easier to want to get rid of than positive feelings. Positive feelings are yummy to sit in, but it's still kind of the same trap of judging. So if I'm sitting here and I'm having a pain in my side, well, that's easy to want to get rid of, to stay in the moment and to accept and kind of downplay. But a nice feeling draws my mind away more seductively. So this is a concept that you really have to experience more. The answer to your question is, if we can accept the way things are as much as we possibly can, then we are practicing coping with things when they get very bad. So if I didn't answer your question, then it's just because I can't very well. But I think the surface answer is, it doesn't matter whether they're positive or negative thoughts. We should probably not, according to mindfulness, we should be trying not to judge them. So beyond that, you need a better teacher than me.
No, that's good. Thank you very much.
John, you know, when we ended this exercise, or ended the formal exercise, you were talking about the experience and what if people wanted to share their experience. And I will say that when I went through, I found myself concentrating on my breathing, and then my mind would scurry off. And so then I had to be really deliberate in concentrating on my breathing. It was a real deliberate, purposeful effort that it took to do that. But once I started to do that, it was interesting that my body started to feel heavier. And for me, so for my experience is that my body started to feel heavy, not in a bad way, but more in a relaxed state where everything wasn't so tense and tight and so it was quite a pleasurable experience as I came out of it with you. It was I was almost in that, it was like a very, very relaxed state. It was kind of, I didn't go into sleep, I didn't go into doze off, but it was like I was in that realm between now and dozing off, right? There was this, and so that was the experience I had, and I don't know what others had, but you asked to share what the experience was like. And
yeah, that's awesome. That's great. Yeah, absolutely. One thing you said clicked, because we've had discussions about this in different classes I've been in, is how it feels like a challenge to do nothing. You know, all you're doing is watching your breath. we're doing nothing. We're practicing doing nothing. And the challenge that we have to do nothing, it's not simple. It's not easy. Every time I ask that same kind of question and go, but you say we're not doing, this is a practice of non-doing. Well, teacher, but we are doing something. We're focusing on our breath. We're doing this. And the answer I always get in different ways is, yes, we have been trained very well in our lifetimes that non-doing is challenging, is there's boredom, there's fatigue, there's sleep, there's all these different things. But in reality, what we're doing is we're practicing not doing anything. And once we can get there, it can be very liberating. It takes all the effort out of it. But most of us beginners spend effort non-doing, which is kind of a funny paradox. But yeah, and it's wonderful. I mean, I have the same kinds of feelings. Sometimes I feel a little lighter. Sometimes I feel heavier. It's different a lot, and it's different over the years as you train. It changes. I was on a real high for a couple of months, and I was like, I am the master meditator. And then everything kind of fell apart, and I went back to trying very hard to stay present. And as my teachers kept saying, stop trying, just don't, So it changes. And let me ask you, I didn't get your name when you were talking. Were you bored at all?
I'm Ed Reese. No, I wasn't bored. It was more just non-doing. As a CEO and as a council member, non-doing is typically not in my vocabulary. Right? So I'm always doing.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't bored, but I felt my mind, as I'm trying to concentrate on my breath, my mind would scurry off to
mine too.
Things that have to be done, or concerns I have, or what's happening in the community. And so, but no, boredom wasn't one of them.
Yeah, the reason I asked is because when you talk to someone who isn't interested in mindfulness, one of the biggest reasons they give, in my experience, is that they're like, I would be too bored. And that's funny because I remember thinking that in the very beginning, but that's not the issue. That's really getting bored. I mean, certainly you become anxious sometimes and, thinking, when is the bell going to ring? That happens. But it's not so much, it's so fascinating to me that watching your breathing is not a boring exercise. There are other issues. When I did a 7-day retreat, people had said, wow, how I couldn't do it. It's so amazing that you didn't talk for 7 days. That wasn't hard at all. That wasn't the hard part. There were other things that were the hard part, not the not talking. In fact, before I went, I told my father-in-law, I said, I'm going to go on this 7-day retreat where I can't talk for 7 days. What do you think about that? And he said, I think it's a good start. So there you go. Any other questions or comments?
Curious I'm Katie.
Hi.
Hi, thank you for this time. It's rich. I'm curious how the mindfulness plays into then taking action and making change when that is, because that's part of life too. So how to accept, yes, and be with things, and how would you talk about change interacting with the acceptance, or change interacting with the mindfulness?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I don't know that I'm sophisticated enough to answer it extremely well. What I would say in my experience would be, and where I've kind of made peace with that idea, in other words, if you're totally in the moment all the time, how do the trash cans get out? You do in the moment what you do in the moment, and those things will take care of the next moment. So what am I doing right now? 100%, I'm taking the trash can. The idea, what am I doing right now in the moment? 100%, I'm planning for next week. So you can be mindful in your moments, and the future will take care of itself. Because when the future becomes our moment, we have prepared in other moments. So there's what's called formal practice and informal practice. And formal practice is doing exactly what we're doing, shutting out all the stimuli that we possibly can, closing our eyes, sitting comfortably, and focusing on our breath. Then there's informal practice, where when you're washing the dishes, you remember, which is the real key, to become as focused and as present as possible. And so I'm experiencing my feeling with the warm water and the soap and the dish. And I am rinsing it, and I am focusing on what I am doing. And I put it in the dishwasher. And then I move on to the next thing. That's something when you're in the shower, paying attention to the sensations. That's called informal practice. There's a little parable I could tell, and I'll do it briefly because I know we're running out of time. The parable is that there was a mindfulness master, and he moved into this very rural area. And there was a huge tree in his front yard. And he went to the lumber store and he bought this little tiny hand axe. And he started chopping. And everyone came over to his house and said, neighbor, if you use a chainsaw, you'll be done in 15 minutes. You know, this hand axe is going to take you forever. And he said, thanks, I got this. I'm going to use this. And chop, chop, chop. And people came and said, what are you doing? This could be a 10-minute thing. I'm going to use this. And over the months, that chopping sound became part of the environment. Chop, 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 chop. And he kept chopping over the course of a year or two. He was chopping. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the tree fell over. He chopped the tree down. And everyone rushed to his place and said, oh my gosh, you know, you chopped that whole tree down over the last years with this little hand axe. Now you're done. What are you going to do now? And he said, make firewood. So being totally engrossed in what you're doing. And as a neuroscientist, there is something pleasurable about being caught up in something. If you think of yourself ever doing a puzzle and being very into it, or having a conversation where you are completely present, or doing anything, a spreadsheet, and you're very into it. Those are very pleasurable times for us humans. And I think it's very healthy too. So if we could learn to be doing what we're doing at all times, wow, to me, that's a lifelong goal. It may not be attainable, but it's aspirational. And if you practice every day, you will get benefit. Maybe we'll never be these enlightened masters, but we certainly will get lots of benefit. And that kind of centeredness that you have is infectious to other people. It makes you attractive. It makes you a healing source, I believe. I think there's all sorts of benefits to yourself and your community. I'll leave with one last quote, which a mindfulness master said. He said, if we were to teach our children to meditate from when they were kids, there would be no war. There would be no social ills if everyone was centered and here and non-judgmental and accepting and so forth. So I don't know. I just want to be calm. I just want to calm my central nervous system. If I can do good to other people, great. So anything else?
Thank you very much, John.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I hope this was useful to you.
It really was.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good.
Everybody have a great
Thank
day.
you for this time.
Thanks, Paul.
My pleasure.
John, it makes me think of a quotation attributed to Martin Luther when he was asked, if you knew that the world was going to end tomorrow, what would you do today? And he said, plant a tree. So you can be present in the moment and doing something that benefits the future, just because we're not caught up necessarily in what's going to happen tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was really wonderful. Thank you, everyone. I hope that you can be practicing mindfulness this week, just a few moments as we center ourselves during these hard times. We appreciate your time today, John.
All right. Thanks so much.
We'll see you.
Thank you very much, John.